Presenting your Story Hour, building for a better tomorrow.
Hi there, this is Uncle Dan.
And I'm Aunt Carol.
And both of us extend a great big warm welcome to every listener.
We're so glad you've joined us.
We love bringing exciting stories to you, stories full of adventure and challenge.
Hopefully you've been following our series on the amazing expedition led by Sir Ernest Shackleton.
Amazing is right, Aunt Carol. First of all, the actual goal of the expedition was to cross the Antarctic continent from side to side. A daring and dangerous plan in its own right. But what actually happened was even more, well, we say amazing.
That's for sure. For those of you who may have missed all or some of our former chapters on Shackleton's expedition, you should know that their sturdy ship, the Endurance, which carried Shackleton and his crew of 27 men southward, became frozen in the pack ice of the Weddell Sea as they headed for their destination of Vosel Bay, Antarctica.
The crushing pressure of the surrounding ice finally shattered the Endurance, and it slipped beneath the surface. The crew then camped for months on the ice, and when spring came, they took to their small boats, since the ice floe on which they had been living began to break apart.
Their grueling journey by boat ended when they were able to reach a tiny strip of rocky beach on ice-encrusted Elephant Island. It offered no protection from the elements and no hope of rescue since it lay far away from shipping lanes.
So at that point, their leader, Sir Ernest Shackleton, handpicked a crew of 5 men to accompany him in one of their small lifeboats on a rescue mission that even today ranks as one of the most impossible sailing ventures ever attempted.
Our last story ended when the James Caird, the 22-foot lifeboat, was launched with Shackleton and his small crew aboard. Thus they began their rescue attempt across the most violent seas in the world.
So, Aunt Carol, are we ready for Chapter 4 of Shackleton's story?
I think we are, Uncle Dan.
All right, then. We call our story Incredible Voyage.
As the Caird left the shore of Elephant Island, the men on board, Shackleton, the skipper, Chippy McNeish, Tim McCarthy, Bosun Jack Vincent, and Tom Crean, heard a hearty cheer from their companions.
Hip, hip, hurrah! Hip, hip, hurrah! Hip, hip, hurrah!
And then they watched as the line of waving figures fell farther and farther into the distance. None of them, neither those in the small boat nor those on the shore, knew if they would ever lay eyes on each other again. The day was bright and sunny, however, and would prove to be the easiest of the voyage. But even so, waves broke over the gunwales and soaked the men to the bone. That night, they ate their first meal under the scanty protection of the makeshift canvas decking.
Well, boys, the journey has begun. Excellent hoosh, by the way, Skipper. It's a good thing we saved some of the sledging rations.
And the nut food. Come on then, Chippy. Eat up.
Oh, I'm eating, but I don't.
Oh, he looks as green as I feel. You'd think such an old salt as I am, Tom Crean's second officer, but I wouldn't get say so. You look like you're enjoying it there, Tim McCarthy.
I guess a body just gets used to the bare necessities, which in our case is sledging use. Beef protein, lard, oatmeal, sugar, and salt cooked with water. Delicious.
At least it's warm. Oops. Grab the stove, Bosun Jack.
Got it, boss. Ouch! Oh, my finger.
Well, at least you saved the stove, my good man. It's going to be a challenge to keep the stove upright in these seas, but we'd be hard put to survive the trip without a way to warm our food.
That's for sure. Even though we have on wool underwear, trousers, sweaters, and such, our Burberry overalls aren't waterproof.
And it looks like we're going to be wet through for the whole trip.
Righto, Bosun Jack. So like the boss said, warm food. That'll make the difference. It would be nice, though, to be able to sit up to eat. The decking is so close overhead. I'm doubled up so far that I'm not sure the hoosh is reaching my stomach.
Hey there. Be thankful for this lovely canvas covering, me friends. I fashioned it from mere scraps, I did. Canvas and wood scraps.
You did a wonderful job, Chippy. Almost magical, I might say. No one could have done better, even if the waves splashing over our little boat do find a few places to leak through. And now, boys, we need to turn in soon. The skipper and I will take the first watch.
In order to reach the sleeping quarters in the small boat, the men had to crawl on their hands and knees under the decking and across the ballast of rough boulders to a small, slightly raised area measuring 5 feet by 7 feet under the bow. a journey in the tossing ship which left the men scraped and bruised. And by no means was the sleeping area either comfortable or dry. In fact, within a few days, 2 of their reindeer sleeping bags were so rotten and slimy from the water that they had to be thrown overboard. And the remaining ones shed many stiff hairs that seemed to infest everything, including their clothes and their food. At any rate, as that first night progressed, Shackleton and the skipper spoke in serious tones about the actual possibility for success.
Oh, that water's cold. It runs right down a fellow's neck.
I hope we can stand up to this constant dousing. A new wave washes over us every couple of minutes.
Certainly isn't pleasant.
Let's hope our years at sea have toughened our resolve.
Well, I have to tell you, Skipper, I know almost nothing about sailing.
Come now, boss. You put in 20-some years in the merchant service.
Oh, yes, but those days seem far behind me. I'm more at home on land and ice now. And speaking of ice, I hope we can avoid crashing into any of the pack until we're clear. It would splinter our little whaler into pieces.
I will keep a sharp eye, boss. As best we can, anyway. It's almost impossible to see anything.
The sea is a relentless enemy, Skipper, and man never really wins the battle.
Well, we've had plenty of practice. And our little crew is made of the best of men.
Very true. I wish we could make for Cape Horn. It certainly would shorten the trip.
Not a chance, boss.
I suppose. But 800 miles across the Drake Passage, famed for the most treacherous seas in the world, isn't a very encouraging prospect in such a little boat as ours. Many large ships have been lost in the violent waves that await us. And the wind...
Yes, the wind. 150 miles an hour isn't unusual for this time of year.
Yes, a shorter journey would definitely be better.
I know. But the westerly winds would keep us from ever reaching the Cape.
Yes, I know. Truly I do. Now, our plan to sail for South Georgia Island holds the best hope for success, and thankfully you are a master navigator, Skipper. If anyone can steer us to South Georgia, it will be you.
If I can't get a good reading from the sun, if the skies are always stormy, if I miss...
We can't miss. Too many lives are depending on us. But if we do, then we will be blown into the open sea, and all will be lost.
All of the men soon learned what misery they were to endure. Staying warm was impossible, as each wave breaking over their boat drenched them anew. Every motion of the boat caused their ice-stiffened clothes to rub them raw. Sleep was almost impossible. They had only a small candle to keep the gloom at bay during the long nights, and only the warmth of their food to brace them against total discouragement. Steering at night was by chance alone across the darkened waters, and the thick skies prevented the skipper from being able to determine their location for days at a time. Finally, on the 3rd day...
Tim, Bosun Jack, steady the skipper so he doesn't go overboard with the sextant. Maybe he can get a reading. The sky has parted just for a second.
Aye, boss. He's got it.
Can you get it, Skipper?
Just a second. Are you ready with the chronometer?
Ready.
Wait. Stand by. Now. Did you get the timing?
Yes, excellent.
I don't know how accurate it'll be with the boat pitching like it is.
Here are your books, the almanac and the logarithm charts. I hope you can read them.
Well, I'll just gently peel the lead pages apart here. Let me see. Yes, there it is. The right page. The numbers have become blurred from the water, though.
Yes, I see. Can you still read them well enough to do your calculations?
I think so. Just give me a second here.
Tim, Bosun Jack, good job, boys. It's back to the pumps, I'm afraid.
Our very least favorite job of all, boss.
I know, but take turns holding the pump to the bottom of the boat. 5 minutes on and 5 minutes off. That's all a person can stand.
Don't we know it? 5 minutes and you can't even feel your fingers in the icy water.
Well, you might not be able to feel your fingers, but you sure can't feel the pain.
I have it now, boss. We've come 128 miles from Elephant Island.
That afternoon, a gale arose, whipping the waves to even higher crests and burying them in an all-pervading gray gloom as the sky dropped to meet the sea. On the 5th day, the winds abated late in the afternoon, and the swells, known as the Cape Horn rollers, regulated themselves into the highest, longest, broadest, most menacing seas on the globe, often reaching heights of 80 to 100 feet. 2 days later, the winds shifted to the south, blasting them with bitter cold from the ice that lay behind them. Giant crests broke over them and froze solid, encasing the entire boat in ice.
The weight of the ice has taken us under, boss.
Yes, so I see. Bosun Jack, Tom Crean, all hands, grab whatever tools we have and chip off the ice.
Aye, aye, boss.
We're on it. Oh, hang on, everybody! Oh,
Bosun Jack!
he's sliding!
He's going over! No! Look! He grabbed the mast as he slid by. He's all right. Thank God!
The next few days took a terrible toll on the men. 2 were in very bad shape, including Bosun Jack Vincent, who had originally been the strongest. It was so cold that Bosun Jack actually lost part of his upper lip when it froze to his metal cup. However, Tim McCarthy remained his cheerful self, the skipper remained steadfast, and Tom Crean seemed nearly indestructible. Shackleton, pressed down as he was under the responsibility for the lives of his entire party and enduring serious back pain, remained unflinching, resolute, and always solicitous of his crew.
How goes it, Skipper?
It's a terrible night, boss. One of the worst I've ever seen in my entire life. I don't think there's a spot on my body that isn't rubbed raw by my icy clothes and the pitching of the boat.
Here, let me relieve you at the helm for a while. Try to get some rest.
Shackleton steered the boat through the total darkness, and then suddenly noticed what appeared to be a break in the clouds. Happily, he called out to the men below.
Good luck, boys. It's clearing. A line of clear sky is breaking behind us.
Only a second later did he realize his mistake. What he had thought to be a split in the clouds was actually the foamy white crest of a gigantic rogue wave, growing higher and higher into the sky, looming menacingly overhead, now curving, ready to crash down and obliterate them from the face of the roiling sea.
For God's sake, hold on! It's got her!
Wow, Aunt Carol, things seem to go from bad to worse. It seems they're doomed.
It does seem that way, doesn't it? But before we go on with the story, let's talk about something a little happier.
Okay, what do you have in mind?
Well, we've received so many letters with riddles and jokes sent in by boys and girls that I think now's a good time to try a few.
All right, this should be fun.
Here are 2 from Rachel, who lives in Thorpe, Washington. The first one is, what did the bird say when the cage fell apart?
What did he say?
He said, cheep, cheep.
That's funny.
The second is, what has ears but cannot hear?
Well, Rachel, you can't catch this old farm boy on that one. I know for a fact that corn stalks have ears but cannot hear.
Here's a knock-knock joke that Jess from Kentucky wants me to try out on you. Ready?
Sure am.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
I for
who?
I forgot.
My Aunt Carol, how appropriate. I have noticed you tend to be a little absent-minded lately.
Oh, Uncle Dan, that's not so.
Just kidding, Aunt Carol. Couldn't resist turning the joke around.
You're
you
pretty
know.
good at that. See if you can answer this one from Ashley, who lives in San Bernardino, California.
Okay.
What do you call a detective who dresses up like a bush?
Maybe we could call the detective Twiggy?
Good try, but wrong. The answer is a detective who dresses up like a bush is a budding secret agent.
I'm glad you sent the answer, Ashley. I would never have gotten it in 100 years.
Thanks, Ashley. It's pretty hard to stump Uncle Dan.
Now, Aunt Carol, I have 2 riddles for you from my friends Christiana and Dorothy. Are ready?
Ready.
Why do cows wear bells?
Well, I believe it's so the farmer knows where to find them.
That's logical, Aunt Carol, but remember, this is a riddle.
True. I give up. Why do cows wear bells?
They wear bells because their horns don't work.
Of course, I should have known.
Here's another one for you. What classroom tables don't have any legs?
I'm not sure. Could you give me a little hint?
Sure. What's 2 times 2?
4, but that's another question. I asked for a hint.
That was a hint, Aunt Carol.
Oh, I get it. The multiplication tables don't have any legs.
You finally got it.
Well, I think that's all the time we have for riddles and jokes today, but you can always visit our website at yourstoryhour.org, click on Clubhouse Magazine, and read the Funny Bones page where there are new ones each month.
You can also click on the Contact Us icon and submit some of your own. I like getting new material to try out on Aunt Carol.
Likewise. So visit us at yourstoryhour.org soon.
But right now, let's get back to today's story, Incredible Voyage.
Hold on! It's got her! We're still alive! Hurry, men! Bail! Bail! She's going under! Hurry!
Amazingly, the small bobbing whaler, the James Caird, and all men aboard had survived the most tremendous wave any of them had ever seen. Shackleton later recorded his reaction to the event in his journal.
During 26 years' experience of the ocean in all its moods, I had not encountered a wave so gigantic. It was a mighty upheaval of the ocean, a thing quite apart from the big white-capped seas that had been our tireless enemies for so many days.
As if in repentance for the terrible ordeal, the weather abated the next day. The men were even able to hang their soggy sleeping bags and dripping clothes from the mast in an effort to dry them a little. The skipper took a reading to discover that they had now come just over half the distance on their journey to South Georgia Island. Meanwhile, back on Elephant Island, the 22 men left behind under the command of Frank Wild had their own trials to face.
Men, it was a long, cold, miserable night. And at the moment, we have absolutely no protections from the elements.
You don't forget, Frank, he was still soaking wet from launching the boss and his crew on the Caird yesterday.
Very true, Tom. And as keeper of our food stores, I know you're eager to keep them dry as well.
If they don't, we'll starve. We might anyway, unless we can kill more seals or penguins.
Understood. And even though we're now north of the Antarctic Circle, we're still dealing with sub-zero temperatures much of the time, and the wind never lets up.
I'll say, we clocked it this morning, 60 miles an hour.
Right, Jock. And if that's not bad enough, it's coming right off the glacier.
I know, Mac, which only strengthens my resolve to devise some kind of shelter. The boss left me in charge, and I aim to do my very best to make sure that we all survive this ordeal. We won't last a week, not to mention a month, if we can't find shelter from the cold and wind.
Do you really think the boss can make it back in a month?
We have to hope he can. It's for sure he won't make it any sooner than that. So, here's what we're going to do. Let's make use of the glacier and dig a cave in the side of it, large enough for all of us. We don't have many tools, but I think we can do it. And a cave would keep us out of the wind.
All those able to do so plunged into the job of carving a cave in the ice and snow. Blackborough, of course, with his frozen feet, had to stay in his sleeping bag, and Ricky Rickinson, who had suffered a mild heart attack upon their landing, was not able to help either. For 3 days, the men scraped and dug into the side of the glacier, and when it was large enough for a few men to try out their new accommodations...
It's not going to work. Once we're inside, our body heat just melts the ceiling and the walls. We're wetter than ever.
In the end, it was First Officer Lionel Greenstreet and the expedition's artist, George Marston, who came up with the winning plan for protection.
Say, George, why not turn the lifeboats over and use them for a shelter?
And we could spread a piece from one of the big tents over the top and fasten it in place.
Even build up the walls from the rocks on the beach. We could put the boats on top of the walls.
And chink the walls with snow. It should work.
Soon the walls were constructed. The Stancombe Wills and the Dudley Docker were overturned on top of them. Planks were placed on top from boat bottom to boat bottom, and a piece from one of the larger tents was secured over the top. More pieces of tent were cut to hang along the sides, and a tunnel opening from one of the tents was secured as a doorway. The men named their new quarters the Snuggery, and then they moved in.
It's our little home away from home.
Well, it isn't quite home, Frankie, but it isn't half bad either.
For sure, Jock. Much better than standing in that cold blast outside.
We can't exactly stand in here, though. It's not high enough.
True, but look at the bright side, boys. Our low roof also gives us our upper bunks. Who wants to sleep upstairs in the boats? First come, first served.
In the next moments, the upper bunks formed by the seats in the overturned boats were selected by 10 men, and the rest found a spot on the icy floor to spread their ground cloths and sleeping bags. It was a tight fit, but even that was not a negative, since by huddling together they could conserve heat. Before long, the photographer, Frank Hurley, managed to rig up a blubber stove inside the hut.
Ooh, that thing sure does throw out the smoke.
Quit complaining, old lady. At least it's warm. Old lady, that's a good one.
Yeah, Thomas Old Lee's Old Lady of the Larder.
All right. Very funny.
Maybe we can rig up a chimney to get rid of some of the smoke.
Great idea. But in the meantime, I'm sure enjoying the warmth. My frozen hands haven't been as happy for a long time.
Hey, Hoss, how about a little music from that banjo of yours?
Coming right up.
Meanwhile, back on the frigid face of the violent sea, Shackleton and his small crew, cold and nearly frozen, continued to do battle. That one day, during which the sun had broken through, was now long forgotten, and their misery seemed endless as they endured relentless icy dousings and the merciless bone-chilling winds. And now thirst was added to their woes, since their fresh water supply was exhausted. The wreckage of another ship, obviously much larger than their own, scudded by on the waves as if taunting them with the knowledge that the sea had taken others, and it could take them as well.
I'm worried, boss, about my sightings. I've only been able to get 4 since we left, and 2 of them were really guesses. We can't afford to be off, even by half a degree.
I think we'd better head for the west coast of South Georgia. That way, if we miss, the wind will take us around to the eastern side. But if we try for the east and miss it, we'll be blown beyond into the Atlantic. And it's 3,000 miles to South Africa.
Well, if I've calculated correctly, we're not much more than 80 miles away now.
And each hour brings us closer. May God see us through.
Look, boss. Kelp. Seaweed.
I see it, Bosun Jack. Land can't be too far away.
What do my eyes behold, mates? Cape pigeons? Birds don't fly all that far out to sea, you know. Cape pigeons, you see that, Tommy?
That I do, Chippy. They're just like the ones we saw at Creekweeten, at the whaling station.
Look, boss. There! Where, Tim? What is it? There! There's a break in the mist! Land! I see land! We've done it! We've done it!
For just a moment, the little group was speechless with wonder. As Shackleton said, they had actually done it. They had done the impossible.
We're right where we should be, according to my calculations. It's amazing!
I told you that you were the best navigator I'd ever seen, Skipper. We're not going to be able to get around to Greek Beacon on the other side, though. We can't spare the time. We've already been 2 days without anything to drink, and it's critical that we find fresh water. We'll have to try for King Haakon Sound. It opens to the west.
But boss, what about the reefs? I hear tell they shoot the waves 40 feet into the air.
Never mind the reefs, Chippies. Somehow we'll get ashore. But we can't tonight. Even as thirsty as we are, it would be suicide to try now. We'll have to wait until morning.
And then, as if nature could not allow safe passage for this little band of bedraggled sailors who had just defied the most impossible odds and made it across 800 miles of the horrific Drake Straits, the weather turned wicked during the night, assaulting them with ever-rising crests, screaming winds, rain, sleet, and hail. By noon the next day, they were in the grasp of a full-fledged hurricane, so near to safety, and yet so far.
I've never seen anything like this, boss. We're being blown toward land, toward the reefs and the cliffs. We're so close, I can hear the breakers. Set the double-reefed sails, boys. Pull away! Pull away!
The next hours of battle against the sea obliterated every other care, including thirst. Shackleton, the skipper, and probably every other man on board believed that they would never live to see another day. In fact, the skipper's single thought was that it would be a sad thing for the world never to know how close they had come to victory. Water was pouring into the boat from above, from below, from everywhere. It looked like they were poised to be dashed upon the rocks and utterly destroyed. The wind whipped them towards certain disaster. And yet, finally...
Boss! Boss!
I'm here, Skipper.
I think it's letting up. Maybe. Just a little.
And he was right. When the morning dawned, the sea was still rough, but the wind had been silenced. Shackleton guided their little boat over the perilous reefs to safety on the shore of King Haakon Bay. Stumbling from exhaustion and thirst, the men soon heard the sound of running water. Just a short distance away, a small, fresh stream flowed across the beach to the sea, and they fell on their knees to drink. It was May 10th, 1916, and after 17 days at sea, the James Caird and her crew were finally safe on South Georgia Island.
My, Aunt Carol, what an adventure. It makes me think of that old saying, truth is stranger than fiction. I mean, if you just made up this story, people might think it was a bit unbelievable.
I know what you mean, Uncle Dan, but it's a true story. Of course, it has been dramatized to make it come alive, but it's definitely factual.
As are all our historical stories. That's why teachers and homeschooling parents, as well as you boys and girls, tell us you appreciate them. The stories are factual, but give much more than just the facts.
The sound effects and music, along with the talent of the actors, bring the dry bones of history to life.
These stories become part of the listener's memory bank. They're fun and a great educational tool.
So do visit our website at yourstoryhour.org, click on the products icon, and see for yourself the hundreds of historical stories we have ready for downloading or available in CD albums. That's at yourstoryhour.org.
Goodbye for now.
This has been Your Story Hour, building for a better tomorrow.
This is Aunt Carol.
And Uncle Dan saying,
Goodbye, everyone.
See you again next time.